This is the Pepperwood Podcast, a production of Pepperwood, a nonprofit conservation organization based at a 3,200-acre nature reserve near Santa Rosa, California, in the heart of the traditional homeland of the Wapo people. At Pepperwood, we aim to inspire conservation through science. And on this show, we talk to scientists, stewards, and environmental educators about what they do and how they do it. We hope to give you a glimpse into the real experiences of folks who devote their lives to taking care of local ecosystems and sharing them with others. Welcome to Season 2 of the Pepperwood Podcast and our 7th episode overall. It is 2025, and that makes this the 20-year anniversary of Pepperwood as an organization. We're in conversation with a pair of folks who have been a part of Pepperwood since its inception, Steve Barnhart, our original Director of Education, and Linda Barnhart, a member of our first class of Pepperwood Stewards. They are both honored members of this community, and their contributions have been formally recognized most recently at the Sunset Celebration in June of 2025. We'll hear from Steve and Linda about their respective and ongoing 2-decade-long journeys with Pepperwood. This conversation took place in late 2024, and Steve describes how he was first introduced to Pepperwood and its founder, Herb Dwight, and some of his research on oak species that connected Pepperwood to researchers in other Californian climate zones in other parts of the world. Linda tells the story of the original naturalist training class for the Pepperwood Stewards program and the diverse ways in which she has contributed to Pepperwood's mission over the years. Let's dive into my conversation with Steve and Linda Barnhart, beginning with Steve's story of how he first came to be introduced to Pepperwood.
I used to come up here with classes quite often when the Cal Academy had the property. And then later when Pepperwood became, by about the same time Pepperwood became the Pepperwood Foundation, that's when I retired from the junior college and came up here to work. So I would say probably from the mid to late 70s until I retired in 2006. Not every year, but there were years when I would bring various classes up here.
Great.
And I got to know Greg DeNevers, who was the original caretaker of the preserve for the Cal Academy. And he developed a very nice herbarium, which I often used to see what was here. And then a fellow by the name of David Cavagnaro, who has since moved to Iowa years ago, but he owned property out where in Garrison Canyon, where we have a little cabin.
Right.
And he lived there, and he was a photographer, and he had a art studio out there as well. So from those two guys, I got to know the preserve pretty well when I was young enough to be able to hike like they do, or did.
So that really, you predate Michael and his time here
Yes.
at the property. That's so incredible. Yeah.
But Michael, of course, came as an employee. I didn't come here until much later than he.
Right, in terms of being on the staff.
And of course, I met Michael,
Yeah.
Later in my career at the junior college when he was taking Greg's place.
If you haven't yet heard the story of how Michael Galogli first came on board as a Pepperwood staff member and eventually stepped up into the role of preserve manager, you can catch that back in episode 5 of our podcast. Steve goes on to describe the process of joining Pepperwood staff as our first Director of Education.
Well, Herb Dwight came to the college and had an appointment with our president. This is Santa Rosa Junior College in 1998, 1999, somewhere in there. That was when the Cal Academy first put the property up for sale. And he was very interested, in converting it into a outdoor classroom preserve research area. Very similar they hope to the Jasper Ridge Preserve that is run by Stanford University. Both he and Jane are very connected to Stanford, or Jane was, of course. And our president said, I don't know anything about Pepperwood. Does anybody here on campus know? Well, one of the vice presidents knew I did. So I got to come to the next meeting. And so I met him probably right at the end of the 1990s. And we began thinking about what we could do out here, but then Cal Academy took the property off the market. And then they put it back on the market in about 2004. And Herb and Jane had decided that if it came back on the market, they would purchase it through the Pepperwood Foundation. And so when I retired in 2006, Herb asked me if I would be interested in working with them to develop the education side of the preserve.
Great.
And I said I'd love to. It'd be a good segue into retirement.
Okay.
I had taught at
Just this
Center
mini
of
baby
Junior
little project
Yes.
of developing a whole program.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that would be pretty challenging and interesting. And so we agreed on time. It would be half time and a salary and so forth. And Herb is has been and always will be, a very generous man. But it turned out the first few years to be pretty much full time. And so my expertise, of course, was with adult or at best teenage
Sure.
folks. And I knew I needed somebody to help me, and that's when I hired Margaret in about 2007.
That's right, because she was previously working for Cal
Yeah,
Academy.
She
right?
had worked for Cal Academy, and on occasion, Michael had asked her to come up and do special things here. So she was aware of what was here.
So she was a natural partner for
And,
you.
Yeah, and she had, I think, you'd have to ask her, but I think that she was not working for Cal Academy at the time, but she was looking to do something.
Great.
And so, yeah,
That works. So yeah, that was the first dream team in our education program there.
Margaret and me.
Margaret and Steve.
Steve's story has a familiar ring to me. I also loved Pepperwood and was a satellite member of the community long before I became a staff member. I had even heard the name Steve Barnhart spoken often at Pepperwood long before I was lucky enough to meet him, and almost always in conjunction with oaks. I just had to hear about the details of his research on Pepperwood's oak species.
I had become interested when I was teaching at the JC and doing a little research with students. And I went to the very first California Oak Symposium in the late 70s, and it was very obvious to me that the knowledge about California oaks was pretty paltry at best. And virtually nothing was known about an oak that finds its southernmost distribution here in the North Bay, commonly called Oregon oak.
Okay.
So I selected that as kind of my research topic. And then, of course, I'm looking for places to study it. And I had plots in Annandale, I had plots in Sugarloaf, and I also, because I had become familiar with a lot of Pepperwood, wanted to find similar kinds of places here. And we found some really nice, relatively homogeneous stands of Oregon oak on Horse Hill on the north slope from Garrison Canyon up toward the old Goodman Preserve. And Mike Barber, who was a ecologist at UC Davis, and I were good friends, and he was also doing something similar with a Sierran oak with a guy named Danny Sanchez Mate, who is an ecologist in Madrid at the University Automonia de Madrid or something like that. So that was where Linda and I spent my last sabbatical, was in Madrid working with Danny.
Incredible.
And there we were looking at Quercus pyrenaica, the Pyrenees oak, that comes down, much like Oregon oak is from northern wetter climates. In Spain, it comes down into the southern, more the Castile region, where there's more California-type climate.
Right.
And so we were comparing the two, and out of that came 2 or 3 publications. And I'm listed, but I'm clearly the junior author. But Danny and I and Mike all remained good friends for that time. Mike, unfortunately, has passed away due to Parkinson's. And Danny, we still exchange Christmas cards, but he's in Madrid and I'm here.
That's a bit of a commute there.
But anyway, that's what came of that. And then Joe McBride, who has also retired but was a forestry professor at Berkeley that I knew, he and I did some consulting work with Oregon oak primarily throughout the North Bay, because it's the habitat in which we find most commonly the Douglas fir coming in.
The encroachment.
The encroachment of Douglas fir. And so by our studies, and we had an article in 1996 in Madronio that talked about what we were finding in the North Bay. And that coincided with some work that was being done up in Redwood National Park in their Oregon oak stands with Douglas fir encroachment.
Oh, I couldn't hear Steve make reference to the idea of Douglas fir encroachment without asking him to dive a little deeper on that topic. Now, I did not predict, although I wasn't surprised, to hear him describe how this phenomenon has its roots in the disruption of traditional fire regimes, as we discussed back in episode 2 with Devin Friedfeld. Here is some of Steve's research-based perspective on the relationship between oaks and Douglas fir trees.
Well, Douglas fir is a native species, and so unlike a lot of species that encroach, that are non-native.
Try to dominate out
right,
other species, right?
Douglas fir our studies and many other people's have found that the primary reason Douglas fir has expanded its boundaries is because of the lack of burning or fire, particularly the fact that the Native Americans, the indigenous people, used fire. And they did that for many reasons, but one was to keep their oak woodlands open and productive for acorns and also the bulbous herbs that grew under them that they would harvest.
Right. Well, because oak stands and oak woodlands, when they're open and able to sort of persist, they're some of the most biodiverse and useful species.
They are, yes. In fact, if you were to measure all the insects and all the other animals, including the plant life, oak woodlands are the most biodiverse vegetation type in the state.
Right. And then as far as like our sort of human use, what we call ethnobotanical use, that not only is it diverse, but it includes a lot of species that like are important for food sovereignty and the ability for humans to access food in this ecosystem, right? Yeah.
Well, not only food sovereignty, but of course many of the plants were used for other purposes, such as basketry and so forth as well. So they were very good farmers, if you will.
Right.
They farmed for oaks.
Right.
And their associated species, and so by making fire a bad thing, and of course the longer you keep it out, the badder it gets.
Right.
We found that Douglas fir would come in, but they needed that shade because the seedlings, particularly here in this region, as opposed to say Washington, there's no summer rain.
Right.
And they need the soils to remain somewhat moist longer into the summer, which the shade of these oaks or other hardwoods would provide.
Oh, so that's interesting. That brings us a little bit circling back to that Spain connection that you had before, where if you have an oak species that is pushing its boundaries of its range down into its southernmost region, that also pushes it into an area where it's going to have the most competition with its other species, and probably getting to the point where it can only just outcompete it enough to survive and persist. Although, oh my goodness, to go back into another layer, that persistence can only happen if they are getting the disturbance that regular fire was producing. Oh, well, that's some three-dimensional chess that I'm going to have to work on a little bit later.
There's a whole other issue, too, which
oh, my
we
goodness.
may or may not want to go into, but we've had quite a few studies on oak hybridization, and we find that the Oregon oak, on its southernmost distribution down here, the best stands of it are not pure stands. They are hybrids with more drought-tolerant oaks like the blue oak.
Right.
And so, we can document from California history at least two other species. Both of them live now in Southern California, which probably evolved from hybrids. And then as the climate changed in the past, the original parents disappeared, at least from that area, and left the hybrids. And of course, somebody comes along 500 years later and says, this is a new species.
Right. So and that really tells me, so that's something I've heard a lot about oaks, which is that they are, what's the word that people use so carefully? Promiscuous, right? They have this tendency to hybridize, right? They can reproduce with other similar species of oaks. And so that's where it becomes really important to be able to find those hybrids, because sometimes that is a sign that you're seeing the next branch of evolution, the next branch of adapting to maybe a changing environment around them.
That's right.
So, all right. So as challenging as it is to go out there and identify these oak species when all of this hybridization is taking place, it's crucial to do it, because then you're starting to watch evolution happen in real time. Ish.
And one of our former stewards, Wendy Herneman, did her master's thesis on a group of oaks and their hybrids here on the preserve. And a former student of mine, Prahlad Popper, who was working on his PhD at Berkeley at the time under David Ackerley, did the genetic work for her, did the gels and all that you need to do, and was able to confirm which, not only that they were hybrids, but where most of the genes from the different other oaks had come from.
Oh, incredible. So
And just today, as you know, David Ackerley is here, which I didn't know he was going to be. And the last thing he asked me before I came in here was, do you have Wendy's thesis? Because I need to know which trees are the markers that she used for those.
Oh, that's so great. So that really shows how oak research keeps, like, it feeds the next bout of research,
That's
right.
right.
We have this ongoing research going with David Ackerley's big forest plots. And as each new study comes in, we refer back to it, we learn from it. I love that. That really shows how the research works and is like this
Absolutely.
ongoing process. Why is it important to understand and support oaks? I mean, we talked a little bit about some of their human uses, and we said that they're very biodiverse. But why is that important? Like, how do oaks help support local ecology?
Well, I would say, although it's I think a slightly overused term, that oaks would be keystone species, because a keystone species, like a keystone in an arch, is the stone that holds the thing together.
Right.
And a keystone species is a species that, if it was not there, the whole nature of the landscape would be different.
Right.
And not only the landscape, I mean, they've contributed to the soil development as well as the biodiversity of organisms that live there. And if it was removed, as it often is, unfortunately, for agriculture and so forth, then the whole biodiversity changes. One of the things that they've noticed, this was years ago, in the Napa Valley, which has a much longer history of trying to do vineyards and so forth in the midst of oaks, is if they left a few oaks in their vineyard, they had a much lower pest problem, because the insects that could eat the pests, if you take out the oaks, no longer come there.
Right. They need to be sustained by these native species, and therefore do a lot of that agricultural work for the farmers.
That's right.
That's incredible. All right. Well, that's a wonderful example of how that's important, and maybe a show of how sometimes terms like keystone species that we throw out real easily, and we hear a lot, but there's a reason why these things remain in our understanding, right?
That's
it's
right.
like, we have to talk about keystone species because it's so significant.
That's right.
Who are some of the other oaks that are found here at Pepperwood?
Well, we have, you can divide oaks into 3 categories here in the United States. If you go around the world, there are actually 5 what we technically call subgenera of the genus Quercus. And we have 3 represented here and throughout California: the red oaks, the white oaks, and what we call, for lack of a better term, intermediate oaks.
Fair enough.
And we have one intermediate oak, the canyon oak, Quercus chrysolepis. We have several white oaks. We have valley oak, Oregon oak, blue oak, and then 2 shrubs, leather oak and California holly oak or California scrub oak. And then among the red oaks, we have the California black oak, which is, I know the coloration gets weird. California black oak and the 2 live oaks, the coast live oak and the interior live oak.
Right.
And they're all here.
Okay.
Some are, not real common, like interior live oak. There are just 2 or 3 places where I know where you'll find them. But
Is that another situation where we're kind of close to the edge of their range?
yes, it's a
Okay.
little too wet.
Ah, okay, but a few of
Cold
them
here.
manage to persist. Okay.
It's the interior is the live oak that kind of forms a bathtub ring around the Central Valley along with blue oak. It's the live
Interesting.
oak over there, but here, of course, our dominant one is the coast live oak.
Gotcha. Okay, that's an interesting sort of overlap of a lot of different ranges
Yes.
of oaks. So that makes this a really interesting little postage stamp
Yeah.
of all of these different oaks
We
coming
have,
from different
because
places.
of the size of the preserve, the eastern preserve is got blue oak.
Right.
The western part of the preserve doesn't.
Right.
But
So
that's where the nice Oregon oak stands are.
So we're like on the border of
We
where blue
are.
oaks are. That's so interesting. Well, what a fun, it makes sense to me now why like Pepperwood itself is such a great living laboratory, because we're
Absolutely.
right here on all these changes.
Among the many benefits of having Steve as a key member of the Pepperwood staff and community is that he introduced his wife and partner Linda to Pepperwood. The fact that she fell in love with Pepperwood and went on to contribute her skills and passion to the land and community here is an incredible blessing that keeps on giving.
I met Pepperwood through my husband around 2005, and I would hear him come home and talk about this place called Pepperwood, and then he became more involved in it, and then we would drive up, and I would see the excavation of all sorts of things going on. So that's when I was introduced to this place called Pepperwood.
One of the coolest things about Linda is that she was among the first class of Pepperwood Stewards. Back in our very first episode, we talked to Gary Morgret about his experiences as a Pepperwood Steward, including the naturalist classes that he took as a part of joining the Stewards community. When Gary went through the process around 2014, it was a 2-class series taught as a partnership between Pepperwood and the Santa Rosa Junior College. But years before that, Linda experienced the first incarnation of Pepperwood's steward training program, and she and Steve can give us firsthand accounts of how it began and how it became what it is today.
I heard about a stewardship program that was going to start, and it was started by Steve and Sean Brumbaugh and Nick Annis, and they met every Saturday at Pepperwood, and I wanted to be involved in that, and it was such a wonderful outdoor learning experience. And so I participated in that, and at the end of that year, from 2006 to 2007, we received a lovely little cup, yes, and a T-shirt, and I just thought that was the greatest thing in the whole world.
I think the Pepperwood swag as part of the reward for joining our steward
Yes,
program is
yes.
like obviously a long-standing tradition,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it is.
Now it's the vest. Everybody gets
Yes,
a vest,
yes.
but that T-shirt and mug, that
yes.
was where it started.
That
That's
was
right.
where it started, and we just so appreciated these men. And not only that, but we had those special speakers to come, all sorts of people to teach us about various things in nature.
Yeah, so you started, the stewards program started with sort of its own dedicated class.
That's right.
And it has sort of transitioned over the years to, it was a JC class for a
Yes.
period of time.
Well, it became a JC class shortly thereafter. And then Adina Marinlander with UC Extension was putting together plans to develop a California Naturalist program. And she came to us because we were already doing something similar to what she had in mind. And so the actual piloting of that, what is now a statewide program, started here. And the first Cal Naturalist class, which Linda was a part of,
Yeah.
graduated in the spring of 2010.
Yes.
Would you say, and Linda, you can probably speak to this better than anyone other than Steve here, how similar was that first pilot program of Cal Naturalist to the class that you had taken that was just developed as part of the stewards program? Like, did they borrow from each other, or was there a big change there?
There's big change. Like, we went to the college and listened to special speakers. Then we would come out here
On Saturdays.
on Saturdays for another type of class and learning experience. It was different in its own way. The first one from 06, 07 was just kind of roughing it out. From 2009 to 2010, that was the real deal.
Right.
I mean, we just really got a good immersion into nature. And so it was wonderful.
Great. So that original class was more like get to know the property
Yeah.
and like sort of learn by doing and walking around.
Right.
But then the Cal Naturalist program really kicked it up a notch, it sounds like.
Although Sean and Nick Annis and Steve, they brought very interesting things. And they even brought up interesting people to talk with us and take us out on the preserve, to the pond and what have you, to learn various things.
Great.
And we had developed the Pepperwood class at the junior college, which was 8 weeks in the fall on the physical sciences and 8 weeks in the spring on the biological sciences.
Wow.
So it was a 16-week course over a full year. And of course, that's not what Cal Naturalist turned out to be, but for the first few years that Cal Naturalist was offered, they let us use that format. And there was one other college in the state that eventually developed that, and that was Pasadena City College.
Okay.
But other than that, they all went to the 40-hour, however you want to put it together format.
Right.
And that's how they do it here now, of course, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have our, not only the Cal Naturalist, but we also have that Climate Stewards,
Right.
similar program in
Yes.
terms of its formatting, but the content's very different. But both of those certification programs through the UC are just so great.
They are.
Yes,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yes.
There are a few of the original Pepperwood Stewards, Linda's compatriots from that original class, who are still active at Pepperwood and who I hope to feature on future episodes. And Steve was kind enough to mention one of them while we were on the subject.
There's a fellow that I would like to acknowledge, and that's Nelson Weller. Nelson Weller was in that first Cal Naturalist class. He's an older gentleman, but he has always had a real love for learning. And he loved the class, and he loved the class so much that he's the one that put up the matching funds. Back in the beginning, you could have a part of this Dwight Center named for you for a certain amount. Like the Conti Court is named because Conti gave $1 million.
There you go.
So Nelson said, I want to name the herbarium after Steve Barnhart.
Aw.
But beyond that, I mean, he did, and we got matching funds, and it happened. But he has just been so interested in the other part that came with the funding, and that is we have what is called a Barnhart internship through the junior college. And he is always asking about how the interns are doing, and do they like what they're doing, and are they learning to be good biologists?
From what I've heard, yes.
Yeah, well, that's what I tell him. But I just want everybody to know who hears this, that he is very much, even though he's probably in his 90s now, very engaged with what goes on up here.
Well, we should all live that path
That's
if we
right.
can. That sounds
That's
incredible.
I love hearing about the many different paths that folks take as Pepperwood Stewards, and Linda was kind enough to share about some of the multitude of projects that she has contributed to over these past 2 decades.
Being a steward, it affords you many opportunities, and I'm thinking of terms of one of the very first things, along with my learning experiences, was with Juliet, and she and I cleaned the Bechtel house. I mean, we just cleaned and cleaned and
was
cleaned.
awful.
It was awful.
Wow. Well, I mean, that house has been there for many decades. I can imagine that it is, I can imagine it coming to a point where it needed the most deep cleaning imaginable.
So she and I took on the task. But also, my stewardship has afforded me the opportunity to be proctoring of community education classes. And that requires a list of things that one as a steward needs to be aware of. It afforded me the opportunity to do herbarium work, like labeling and pressing and freezing and rotation, cataloging in the cabinets, planting and collecting. And we also developed pictures for the herbarium, and the herbarium was named after Steve Barnhart in honor of him. So I had a big picture because I seen it one place at a university in their herbarium, and I thought, well, why couldn't we do it here at Pepperwood?
Yes.
So I put his big picture up there and lots of beautiful pictures. So that was a wonderful project in itself. I've been a greeter for many public lectures, and we also created a little pamphlet for the herbarium that explained what an herbarium was. Why is it important?
Yeah.
Why collect these seeds? Why collect these and squash these flowers and what have you? And 2017, I just thought it important, with all the picture taking I did of many, many beautiful flowers, that I should get these things organized. And I had one man say to me on a walk, he said, wouldn't it be nice to have a flower guide, bingo, I just said to myself, I know what my next project's going to be.
Aha.
So that's created a flower guide for beginners. That's for beginners. But I have been told that a lot of people like it. And it can be used any place in Sonoma County because these flowers are just a lot of places.
That's wonderful. I use your flower guide every year.
Oh.
And part of that is because maybe I'm never going to stop being a beginner.
Yeah.
But I do think it's an incredibly accessible guide. It's
Yes.
really the way you've put it together based on flower color, because as you're going out there and having these springtime flower excursions, that might be as much as you can tell about a flower as a first,
That's
botanist.
right, absolutely.
So it gets you started down that path.
It gets you started. It just gets you started, and that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it would be so wonderful for our children that come up here and our people that attend classes to have something to take away with them. So I created a bookmark, and on the back of it, it tells about our website, where to go, to a little more information that they can take that home. It's not only for their nature book, and I would think so many that come up here at least have a nature book. And
I hope so.
So yes,
If not before, then after. I'd like to hope they all
exactly
go out
right.
and get one.
And so it's so fun to see adults and children and other learning individuals to just take one home with them.
Yeah, and just have that little reminder.
That's
Hey,
right.
Pepperwood is here, and it's a place you can come up and visit.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Well, your work as a steward, really sounds like it has run the gamut. You were in the herbarium doing documentation and organization of these species. So the herbarium has, samples from all kinds of different plants. And you are also using your people skills, right? You're greeting people at events and helping them get organized. And then you're just using elbow grease, just getting our facilities up to snuff, cleaning that Bechtel house. It just takes all kinds of different skills, right?
That's right.
Whether you want to be with other people or whether you just want to be with
That's
yourself.
Right, right, that's right. If you have skills that go across the board in many different directions, all the better. But if you don't, we can use all sorts of wonderful skills. It is just amazing to see the talents of so many people. Just amazing.
Oh, it takes, that whole community is required to really make Pepperwood
Takes a
Yes.
community.
thrive.
It
Absolutely.
takes a community, absolutely.
It's so important to know that you don't have to be an oak researcher like Steve to contribute meaningfully to conservation and stewardship. Almost any skill or interest you have can strengthen the Pepperwood community and enhance its mission to inspire conservation through science. Linda's love for this land and community shine through in everything she says and does, and she is such a valuable part of Pepperwood. Her contributions can be seen and felt everywhere, and so could yours. The current form of our Stewards training course, the UC Environmental Stewards certification programs, run every year from January to March. At the time this episode is released, the upcoming course is the California Naturalist certification, starting in January 2026, and we alternate that every other year with the Climate Steward certification. Either of those are wonderful, interesting experiences that will open your eyes to new ideas and function as the perfect introduction into the Pepperwood community. And don't forget that you can come up and join us any month of the year at our monthly volunteer work days on the first Saturday of each month. Steve and Linda have contributed so much over the past 20 years, and it sounds like they have received some valuable experiences back from this community that they have helped to form.
For me, and probably for my wife as well, we just really feel like this is our second home. We've been here a lot. We've seen a lot of changes. We've gotten to know the people. We really love the folks who are here. They're just wonderful folks, including you.
Oh, gee, I'm blushing over here.
We are very, very fortunate to have such a wonderful staff.
That's
And
right.
when I think back to the fact there was Michael and I, and then there was Michael and I and Margaret, and then there was Michael and I and Margaret, and who was the next one? Well, it wasn't long before we had Lisa.
Oh, right.
the
Yeah.
executive director. We finally realized we were getting too busy to not have an executive director.
Somebody's got to drive this train.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And then Sandy Funky came along, and she took over the ed job, and then I went to what is called an academic director. And I gave me more time to work with the local colleges, particularly Davis and Sonoma State and the JC. But we just love it here. We just really feel every time we drive up that road that this is our second home.
Oh.
Yeah.
And we feel volunteerism is very important. We're not ready to sit on the couch the rest of our days. We want to be out there sharing information. And especially my dear husband can give a world of information. I can be the cheerleader. I can say, yes, let's learn this.
You're being very humble, Linda.
Yes, she
All right.
She has a lot of information.
Absolutely. So
we
so
think
that sharing and really like leading by example, so that your grandchildren and the other people in the
right.
community see
Right.
that it's so important to do that and to share your talents, whatever they are.
That's right. Well, we have 10 grandchildren, and we have pictures of Grandma sitting on the ground with the grandchildren around with their books, because I got them books too, and looking at certain things, whether it be a pine tree, an oak tree, or whatever, a mushroom, whatever it might be.
One of our grandsons decided that after he was sitting in the circle with Grandma and they were looking at this mushroom and trying to identify it, he got so frustrated he stepped on it.
Oh no! You know what? We've all felt that way from time to time. I'm sure the mushroom was fine in the end, but
Yeah, so we've had fun sharing nature with our grandchildren,
We sure
every
have.
one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing it with me. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for
you're
joining
welcome.
me today. This has been really fun to hear more about your journeys.
Well,
at Pepperwood.
thank you for having us.
Thanks again to Steve and Linda Barnhart for this conversation and for everything that they have done and continue to do for Pepperwood. But don't switch off yet. It's time for this episode's installment of the Nature Sound Guess Who game. If you're listening along close to the time of release, you may have been waiting for months to discover the ID of the mystery nature sound maker from episode 6. So here we go. In the Nature Sound Guess Who game, we play a nature sound at the end of each episode. You have the time in between episodes to guess or apply your knowledge or research which animal, vegetable, or mineral made the sound in question. You can email your guesses to podcast@pepperwoodpreserve.org, or you can comment on the corresponding post on our social media, whether that be our Facebook, where we are simply Pepperwood, our Instagram, where we are Pepperwood Preserve CA, or Blue Sky, Pepperwood Preserve. Let's listen back to the sound from last episode. Okay, folks, that sound was made by the turkey vulture. Specifically, that was the sound of a pair of juvenile turkey vultures, scientific name Cathartes aura, performing some of the only vocalizations that turkey vultures are known to make. The Audubon Society's Pocket Guide to Familiar Birds of North America, West Edition, tells us that this species is generally silent, but will utter soft hisses or groans at nest or when disturbed, and that is just what we are hearing. Expert sound recordist Andrew Spencer captured this sound recording and submitted it to the Cornell Lab Macaulay Library with a note that these were calls from a pair of older chicks at a nest in an old barn, calling in alarm at our presence. The characteristic silence of this bird species means that, unlike many other birds, researchers and bird enthusiasts are not likely to observe turkey vultures using their ears. Fortunately, they are easy and common to spot using your eyes as they tilt and glide through the sky, searching for carrion to clean up, using their powerful sense of smell to find food. Thanks again to Andrew Spencer and the Cornell Lab Macaulay Library for this rare chance to hear the sounds that our avian cleanup crew can make. Now, here comes a new sound for you to guess between now and next episode. Here it comes in 3, 2, 1. And here's your second chance in 3, 2, 1. Another curious challenge to think about, and submit your answers to us via social media or via email at podcast@pepperwoodpreserve.org. Until next episode, thank you for listening, and don't forget to keep your ears tuned into nature.